This film presents three pieces of evidence that the Earth over the last few thousand years, not millions or billions, but just a few thousand, has significantly increased in both size and mass. Firstly, the rift zones of the mid-ocean ridges clearly illustrate the expansion of the Earth's surface without any compensation, or in other words, without subduction, which we will discuss later. Thus, if the Earth's surface area has grown, its volume must have increased as well. Secondly, the Earth has grown not only in volume, but also in mass, as scientists from various countries have long proven that the weight of dinosaurs and other large paleo animals, birds, and insects does not match the current gravitational force on Earth. And thirdly, in the oldest Roman 10-month calendar, a lunar synodic month, from new moon to new moon, lasted not 29.5 days as it does now, but nearly a whole day longer. Now, let us go over everything step by step. Since our school days, we have known that many millions of years ago, all the continents on Earth were united into one large supercontinent, Pangaea. The word Pangaea is derived from two Greek words, pan, meaning all, as in Pan-American, and Gaia, meaning Earth. But why did scientists come to this particular conclusion, that there was once a single supercontinent? Firstly, the commonality of paleofauna and paleoflora in Carboniferous deposits indicates the unity of today's continents in the past. Secondly, the continents, as if they are large puzzle pieces, almost perfectly connect with each other, forming a single whole, that same Pangaea. This is especially noticeable in the contours of the coastlines of America and Africa. However, there is another hypothesis suggesting that Pangaea covered not just part of the Earth, but its entire surface, serving as its first or previous, shall we say, crust. After our planet expanded in volume, Pangaea split into several parts, which form today's continents, as well as large and small islands. Although the Earth expansion hypothesis is over 100 years old, it is considered marginal in scientific circles. The accepted theory is plate tectonics, whose essence is that the Earth's crust is divided into individual plates that are constantly moving due to convective currents in the Earth's mantle. In the thinnest part of the Earth's crust, at the mid-ocean ridges, new crust is formed. But if the area of the crust is increasing, then the size of the Earth must be increasing as well, correct? No, say proponents of plate tectonics. The formation of new oceanic crust is balanced by subduction, where the thinner oceanic crust slides beneath the thicker continental crust and mantle layer. This process causes that portion of the oceanic crust to dissolve into the Earth's liquid mantle. Supporters of the expanding Earth concept reject subduction as a phenomenon. They argue that the pressures at spreading points where new crust forms are insufficient for subduction, meaning they are insufficient for the sliding and forcing of these newly formed oceanic plates beneath the continental plates and the upper solid mantle layer. However, for the newly formed crust in the oceans to be fully compensated, the total length of all spreading lines, that is, the length of all mid-ocean ridges, must equal the length of all subduction zones, those very zones of crust formation compensation. But on Earth, the total length of all subduction zones, according to official calculations, is 3 times less than the total length of all spreading lines. In other words, 3 times more new crust is formed than is compensated. For example, there are no subduction zones at all between America and Africa, except for the eastern end of the Caribbean basin. This means that there can be no 100% compensation for the formation of new crust, the formation of new surface area on Earth. The uncompensated difference between spreading and subduction is clear evidence that the Earth once significantly grew in volume. But how long did this intense growth of our planet last? And why was it intense? If we look closely at the mid-ocean ridges, we can see that lava outflows from the Earth's mantle occurred along the entire ridgeline at the same time. And not only along the ridgeline, but also across it. This giant rupture of the Earth's crust vividly demonstrates that it was caused not by a local, but by a global change in the planet's internal pressure. And this global increase in internal pressure could only have arisen as a result of the formation of a new volume within the Earth, which means new matter and new mass. I will explain later where this new matter in the Earth came from. And since the Earth has the shape of a geoid, the geoid here is depicted in an exaggerated form. At first, The excess pressure was directed toward leveling the Earth's crust as much as possible to bring it closer to a spherical shape. Only then, when the limits of the crust's elasticity were reached, did it rupture at its thinnest point in the mid-ocean ridges, causing a large amount of lava to be expelled, which solidified almost vertically in the water. Along with the lava release, the internal pressure on the Earth's crust was relieved, allowing the Earth to return to its previous geoid shape, induced by the Earth's rotation around its axis. At the same time, the formation of new matter in the Earth's core continued. How is this evident? I have highlighted the rift zones in yellow. They were formed as a result of the expansion of a fissure volcano. In the initial hours of its eruption, the fissure volcano looked like this. But since the Earth's expansion continued and the fissure kept growing, a rift was formed. It filled the crustal gap with basaltic lava from the Earth's mantle. The width of these rifts reaches several tens of kilometers. And this is only in the Atlantic Ocean. If we combine them with similar rifts in the Pacific and Indian Oceans, then a single expansion of the Earth by 100 kilometers in circumference or so over a few years is an undeniable fact. Now, let us imagine that the Earth's core is a kind of matter generator. And matter means mass. We know that nothing comes from nothing. But the Earth's core is not nothing. It is something. The nature of this something is unknown to us. But the obvious growth of the Earth cannot be explained without an increase in matter and mass. Therefore, whether one likes it or not, it is necessary to make an assumption that contradicts the dogmas of modern science. That the Earth increased not only in volume, but also in mass. And new mass means new matter. That is, at some point, the Earth's core generated a large amount of new matter over a relatively short period, not millions or billions of years, resulting in an expansion of both the Earth's volume and its mass. After this, Earth's gravity increased, which not all living creatures could survive. The largest animals, such as dinosaurs, became extinct. Yes, dinosaurs are key allies of proponents of an expanding Earth, not only in volume, but also in mass. The immense mass of dinosaurs and their bony skeletons were not suited to the modern force of gravity. Many scientists agree with this. Their conclusions are that either the Earth in the time of the dinosaurs had a different, much weaker gravitational force at the same size, or the Earth was smaller, and not just smaller, but also significantly less massive than it is today. Otherwise, if the smaller Earth of the dinosaurs had the same mass as today, not only dinosaurs but humans would also find it much harder to move across such an Earth. For example, if the diameter of the Earth were half of what it is today, with the same mass, then on the surface of such an Earth, each person's weight would increase by 4 times. It would be as if 240 kilograms were added to your weight of 80 kilograms, making your total weight 320 kilograms. It seems that the elephant is the largest land animal that could exist with the current Earth's gravity. The same applies to large birds. Compare Argentavis, the largest bird of the Upper Miocene period, weighing up to 80 kilograms with a wingspan of 7 meters, to the albatross, the largest flying bird alive today. The weight of an albatross is approximately 7 times less than that of Argentavis, with a wingspan of up to 3.5 meters compared to Argentavis' 6 to 7 meters. It is clear that these birds flew under different gravitational forces, and even insects in those distant times reached gigantic sizes. Is this not evidence that all these giant species of living beings, including insects, experienced a significantly weaker gravitational force than what we experience today? Anticipating my viewer's objection that during the time of the dinosaurs, Earth's atmosphere was denser, I will respond as follows. Yes, this would have been significant for birds and flying insects, but not for land-dwelling creatures. For the weight of dinosaurs to be, for example, half as much due to the buoyant force of the atmosphere, the density of such an atmosphere would have had to be approximately 400 times greater than it is now, or nearly half the density of water. Of course, there was no atmosphere this dense on Earth. When we need to emphasize that every phenomenon has its physical limits, we recall the saying, "Trees do not grow to the sky." In the early 21st century, American scientists proved that gravity imposes a restriction on the maximum height of trees, and that trees cannot grow taller than 130 meters. Unfortunately, there is no archaeological or paleontological evidence of trees taller than modern tall trees, reaching up to 115 meters. However, it is quite possible that on the smaller Earth, trees reached 200 meters or more in height. With current gravity, however, trees cannot grow taller than 130 meters. And the same gravitational limitations apply to living beings. I am puzzled by supporters of the expanding Earth theory, according to academician Laren's version, in which Earth's mass remained unchanged. Because academician Laren left no chance for dinosaurs to survive within the framework of his expanding Earth model. As on a smaller Earth, but with the same mass as modern Earth, dinosaurs would have weighed many times more. And when did the dinosaurs go extinct? Scientists believe that dinosaurs went extinct around 66 million years ago. However, over 30 fossilized dinosaur remains have been found, from which scientists have isolated not only soft tissues, but also proteins, such as collagen, hemoglobin, and others. These biomolecules are extremely unstable, and millions of years would be an impossibility for their preservation. Moreover, these remains contain a sufficient amount of the unstable carbon isotope, carbon-14, which survives in any organic material after its death for no more than 50,000 years. That is, if an organic sample is 50,000 years old or more, the devices known as mass spectrometers can no longer detect carbon-14 in such samples. But if soft tissues and dinosaur remains indicate that these giant extinct animals existed relatively recently, no more than 50,000 years ago, based on the carbon-14 in their samples, then there should be other relatively recent evidence of different gravity on our planet. And strangely enough, such evidence that the Earth once had a smaller mass, and accordingly, a different gravitational force, may be found in Earth's natural satellite, the Moon, and the Roman 10-month lunar calendar. All ancient calendars were lunar calendars, because it is easiest to measure time by the Moon, as the lunar phases are consistent and visible to the naked eye. Today, one lunar cycle from new moon to new moon is 29.5 days. But it seems this was not always the case. All modern and ancient sources report that in the Roman 10-month lunar calendar, attributed to the legendary Romulus, there were 304 days, and that it was 61 days short of a full solar year. In an English reference dictionary from 1700, there is an illustration of the Roman 10-month lunar calendar, or rather, its reconstruction. 6 months with 30 days, and 4 months with 31 days. Thus, the average duration of a month in this lunar calendar was 30.4 days, compared to 29.5 days in today's synodic month. This difference of nearly a day per month suggests that the last increase in Earth's mass occurred shortly before the transition from one calendar to another. In other words, the increased mass of the Earth pulled the Moon into a lower orbit, causing the Moon to make more revolutions around Earth per year. And accordingly, the length of both the synodic and astronomical months became shorter. This is the first point. Secondly, this change occurred relatively quickly, as the Roman 10-month calendar is believed to have existed for about 30 to 40 years, after which the transition to a 12-month lunar calendar with an average month length of 29.5 days took place. Please do not confuse the sidereal month, which is the time it takes the Moon to orbit Earth 27.3 days with the synodic month. The latter, spanning 29.5 days, is observed by the phases of the Moon, such as from one new moon to the next. In my previous films, I have already shown documents and artifacts suggesting that the ancient era of Julius Caesar and Octavian Augustus was not the 1st century BC, but the 15th century, the so-called Renaissance, and that Julius Caesar was also Pope Julius I. Historians call such images of Caesar anachronisms. But the problem for historians is that there are many such images, and they are systematic. We will discuss Julius Caesar separately. The shifting of the lifetimes of Caesar and Augustus from the 15th century back by 15 centuries brings us 15 centuries closer to the 10-month Roman lunar calendar, as well as the Julian solar calendar of Pope Julius II, whose secular name was Gaius Julius Caesar, Octavian Augustus. The pontificate of Julius II was moved approximately 8 years closer to us by historical falsifiers of the 17th and 18th centuries. Incidentally, remnants of the pre-Julian lunar calendar remain in 16th century calendars in the form of lunar month day names, the nones, ides, and calends. More than 1,500 years had passed since Julius Caesar's solar calendar replaced the old 12-month Roman lunar calendar. Yet the Ides of March, on which Julius Caesar was killed, still appeared in 16th century calendars. After the Ides of March, which in the lunar calendar corresponded to the full moon, The April calends began, counting backward the remaining days of March until April 1st. In this 15th century painting, Caesar and his assassins are depicted in 15th century attire. An anachronism, historians might say. Fine, let it be an anachronism, due to Renaissance artists not knowing how to depict heroes of ancient times. Museums and archaeology did not exist back then. At the same time, 16th century artists depicted Spanish conquistadors in America wearing the same military gear as Roman legionaries, leather cuirasses and terruges. And here we see the troops of Charles V Habsburg in Rome in 1527, also the 16th century. And here too, we see leather cuirasses and terruges, just like those of Roman legionaries during the Roman Empire, as if 1,500 years of military equipment saw no progress. So, the nones, ides, and calends, tied to the lunar phases of the Roman lunar calendar from the time of the Roman Republic, remained in the solar Julian calendar for 16 centuries, and only from the second half of the 16th century did they begin to fade from memory. Another anachronism. Not at all. The nones, ides, and calends are clear evidence that human history has been lengthened by at least 1,500 years. And Darwinist scientists have lengthened the history of Earth even further by millions of years, despite the fact that in dinosaur remains soft tissues, proteins, and carbon-14 were found, which contradict the millions of years attributed to dinosaurs. This naturally raises the question, could humans have encountered dinosaurs? The so-called Ica stones from Peru, engraved with images of dinosaurs and humans, Peruvian natives seem to tell us that yes, humans lived alongside and saw dinosaurs. However, I personally consider these stones a successful commercial hoax, if only because nothing similar has been found anywhere else. It is more likely that humans witnessed the Earth's expansion at its very last stage, when gravity had already become intolerable for large dinosaurs, which in turn suggests that humans missed dinosaurs by several thousand years, but not more than 50,000 years, since scientists found carbon-14 in dinosaur fossils. Roman calendars, both the old lunar and the new Julian solar calendars, indicate not only that Earth expanded intensively in the relatively recent past, but also that, for more than the last 5 centuries, Earth has no longer been expanding. But first, let me discuss the timing of the Julian calendar's introduction, which was adopted not in 45 BC, as historians assert, but in the year 1500 by Pope Julius II, whose pontificate, I repeat, was shifted by historians approximately 8 years closer to our time, so that his reign would not coincide with the notable year 1500, the date of the Julian calendar's introduction. The history of Christianity was lengthened by 1,500 years, but censors and editors of the new, lengthened version of history overlooked and missed certain details. For example, Plutarch and some other authors state that, on the night before Caesar's assassination, that is, the night of March 14th to 15th, the Ides of March, Calpurnia, Caesar's wife, was awakened by the light of the full moon. But if March 14th and 15th were full moon nights, then Caesar was assassinated, not according to the solar calendar, but the lunar calendar. This also implies that Julius Caesar had no connection to the Julian solar calendar, as the date of his assassination was recorded according to the pre-Julian Roman lunar calendar, and on the Ides of March, with a full moon. And here is another excerpt from the same article by Professor Gustav Seyfarth, a German-American scholar of the 19th century. You will find a link to this article in the description below. In this article, Seyfarth also references Ambrosius Macrobius, an ancient author purportedly from the 5th century, but actually no earlier than the 15th century. I quote, Macrobius, in his Saturnalia, reports that the first day of the Julian calendar commenced consistently with the preceding Roman months with a new moon. Now let's check. What was the phase of the moon on January 1st, 1500? The actual, not mythical, year of the Julian calendar's adoption. New moon. Just as Macrobius describes. And if Earth had grown by even 1% of its mass over these past 500 years, any computer program would have calculated the phase of the moon on January 1st, 1500. Based on the parameters of the present moon, not the old one, and we wouldn't see a new moon on January 1st, 1500. This leads to another significant conclusion. Earth has not grown, or its growth has been negligible, for at least the last 5 centuries. You can find more details about the Julian and Gregorian calendars, as well as the most pivotal council in Christian history, the Council of Trent, in my book, The Other History of the Roman Empire. That's all for today. I would sincerely appreciate your likes, comments, and shares of my films on social media. Thank you. And until next time, this was Alexander Tomansky.